Segment 3, Gold and Black Live, and we are joined by our resident expert, Dr. Patrick Tutka, and great to have him involved. You may recall, if you're a frequent watcher of this show, that he was on earlier in the year with Dr. Jeannie Boyd talking about the start of his the sport management program at Purdue. And I guess I'll start with that, just how that's going. It's a new graduate level sport management program, and a very big feather in Purdue's academic cap to have this, especially in times like this when we have topics to discuss. So how's that been going?
It's been going very well. Very excited to have our inaugural class on campus. Wide-ranging group of students, from student athletes to people who've been out of work or out of the school world for several years, to people who were freshly out of school. It's been wonderful, great students, and it's looking even better for next year. So we're continually looking to grow and get better, and the support we receive from the university is wonderful. So that's awesome, and the support we receive from the people that you have on here all the time from the athletic side of things are wonderful as well. So we're excited about that too.
Well, selfishly, I'm excited because, like I said, I like to have resident experts and be able to talk about something like we're talking about today. And this has been a hot button, a thing that a lot of people are reading about and not knowing what it's all about. And I'm probably in that category, though I'm getting up to speed. The term private equity, which is a little bit of a misnomer in this situation, but you've read about it. The Big Ten Conference potentially looking at funding and additional funding and the ability to get an investor to be able to do it. But break that down a little bit in broad stroke terms of what's going on and what the issue is right now with the Big Ten Conference and how this is all coming to a head.
So based off of what has been reported, it seems like Tony Petitti, the commissioner and the commissioner's office and the conference office, has been engaged with the University of California retirement system for $2 billion of potential, whether you want to call it public equity, private equity, it would be an infusion of cash.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you would be able to take this money right now, and in return, they would create this conglomerate called the Big Ten Enterprises, which would then control your media rights, would control your conference championship rights, would control a variety of different things that would be beneficial for them to be able to make money, creating future partnerships, and then they would get a percentage of that money to pay themselves back over the course of the contract. And it's a 20-year-ish deal with it ending in 2046, which would also expand the grant of rights. So that means each school's conference's rights to their media for the next, move it from 2036 to 2046 or wherever we are, 2032, whatever the current contract is with Fox.
Yeah, right.
And its various partners. And I think it's a very interesting. I do want to make just one quick note on there, which is what I just mentioned, which is Fox is also at this table.
Yeah.
And I think they're also involved in this. They have to be involved in this in some way, shape, or form because of their partnership with the Big Ten Network and their ownership share of the Big Ten Network. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces here, and I think that part has been interesting. We can talk some more about the various moving pieces, but that's kind of the basics of it. Each school would get about anywhere from 100 to 130. There would be a slight variation in what each school would get based on what its perceived value is based on the reporting so far. So the bigger brands or the bigger schools would receive a little bit more money than the others, but not a significant hugely. It's not like it's one school's going to get 300 million, other school's going to get 40. It seems like it's 100 to like 130. Not gigantic, but certainly different. And I think that's also interesting. And I also think it's interesting that, and we'll get into this in more detail, that one of those schools that unquestionably would be getting that bigger share is one of the, actually two of the schools who would be getting bigger shares are two of the biggest, pushbacks on it, which is Michigan and Southern Cal.
Yeah, Michigan, USC, Penn State, Ohio State might be ones that are going to get that bigger piece of the pie. But it is interesting, like you said, it's not that much different. And I think that's another misnomer out there that there's going to be this tier. I think every team in the league is going to would get at least 100 million in this process. But that's right. Michigan has been very vocal as of this week. Its Board of Regents met in Flint and basically said, "No way, we're doing this." USC has been the same boat. Of course, this is tied to the UC program. There's no official. I guess that part's been blessed enough that UCLA can still do this, even though it's part of the UC system, the UC pension fund. But that to me seems to me to say it's not much ado about nothing, but this is a serious roadblock to getting this done. I mean, Tony Petitti said, we got to get this done. He's quoted as saying this, or we want to move forward. I don't know if that absolutely means this, but it's a serious roadblock right now.
Well, and if we followed Tony Petitti since he's stepped into the commissioner's role, he is not one to go put himself out on the ledge very often.
Yes.
He usually goes out and says things when he has or he feels like he has the votes to get things, what he needs to get done. And so this is kind of an unusual situation in that regard, in that he was a little bit, I don't want to say premature because that's not fair.
Yeah.
But he's getting pushed back in ways that he doesn't usually see. And I also, I do want to say one thing just to kind of clear up one thing. The pension system is a completely separate entity
right.
from UCLA, so there's no the pension system is completely privately operated. I shouldn't say privately operated, but it's a completely separate entity. So the Board of Regents at UCLA or the UC system have no real control over it, which is one of the interesting weirdnesses of California's governing operations. But
another topic.
Yeah, we could spend days on that, but there's.
But I think the interesting thing is, you brought up there are so many moving parts to this, even though there's no doubt that with revenue, rev share, and all the other things that are coming into this, there's been a lot talked about. A lot of schools, Northwestern being one. Purdue still has debt, obviously, on Ross-Ade Stadium and Mackey Arena because of projects. I think the Big Ten's got billions of dollars in debt around the conference. And of course, Northwestern's building, a $700 million stadium. They're only playing in a 12,000 seat stadium tomorrow. but then by next time Purdue plays up there, it's going to be a beautiful facility. My point is, there are serious financial concerns, and not everybody is the same. And this has been a constant issue with the Big Ten over the years of being able to, they've all played equally, but they've had to fight to get to that sometimes, I'm sure. But I thought you brought something up really interesting, because you have to be careful. The ACC got itself into a pickle because of long-term commitments and its inability to be flexible moving forward. And this is as we hear more than anything, it's building the plane while it's in the air, so to speak. I mean, is that a fair assessment of where we are with all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think building the plane as we speak is the terminology of college sports right now.
Yeah, no doubt.
We really don't know what's happening tomorrow, and I think anything that creates a inflexibility is something that has some real real concerns, as the ACC has shown significantly, which is that when you don't have flexibility, you have super long commitments to groups. You lose the ability to negotiate your way into new things, or to potentially work through new opportunities, or to take advantage of things that come down the pipeline that we don't see, we don't even know exist right now. And when you're talking about grant of rights, you're talking about a very wide ranging agreement here. You're talking about, when you talk about grant of rights, you're talking about giving up all of your multimedia, the rights that you want to use to broadcast anything, to this organization. And there's an unquestionable value right now for these conference schools that I was just reading before we came on. Even Ohio State has paid $33 million in debt payments last year, in its budget from last year. So I mean, all the schools have this issue, or almost all the schools have this issue, because almost all of them have expanded their stadiums and renovated their facilities over the last 10 years or so. but I think it's you always got to be careful of short term gain for long term. What are those consequences 10, 15 years down the road that we're not seeing right now? And if there's anything that we know about college athletics over the last 5 years, it is that we have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring. So, very careful to be excited about anything that causes us to, as a conference, to lock in for, 20 years on anything.
Well, and there have been some that have said, it's going to be a proverbial silent, I guess maybe lack of a better term, a silent partner here, that there won't be a lot of noise from this group, but they still will have a seat at the table, and that is something that is very new for the Big Ten. Whether it will be business as usual and just and you're making some assumptions here. This is going to continue to grow. This is going to continue. This being the Big Ten, going to be what it is today, and that's what's so interesting about this, because you've heard all this discussion about, and of course, the folks down at Texas Tech that are making squawking about this whole deal. Talk about that a little bit, just because a lot of people have seen those commercials on college football broadcasts. They're not happy about this because this could eliminate their ability to negotiate as one unit to quote unquote repeal the 1961 Radio Act or whatever that.
Yeah,
Whatever
the Broadcasting Act.
broadcasting. So explain that a little bit, because why that group is so loud about its opposition to something like that.
So basically, the Broadcasting Act provides Saturday to college football, Sunday to professional football, while protecting Friday nights for high school.
Right.
And so that was the initial goal of the act. It also provided, the NFL benefits, and the other leagues benefit as well, from the fact that it allows them to negotiate in a different way than the colleges were allowed at the time, because the NCAA was negotiating for the colleges. So the NCAA benefited at the time from that act as well, because it provided that all of these groups kind of a mini antitrust protection to be able to negotiate as one entity. And so now that the conferences are all spread out and negotiating themselves, it is an act now that's kind of serving as a roadblock from the conferences getting together and saying, we're going to negotiate as one group to get all of our rights together and say, hey, ESPN and Fox, we want to negotiate as four conferences instead of one, and we're going to get a larger a larger number because of the power of those four conferences. Also, it's going to get more attention for those other schools that maybe right now aren't getting attention as much. And I think Texas Tech is a great example. Both of this discussion, but also of the larger world of college athletics. You have a massive booster, a couple massive boosters down at Texas Tech who've decided to invest a lot of money over the last couple of years. You saw it with the softball pitcher. I think it was a really
Yeah.
great example, spending $1 million on a pitcher who takes them all the way to the championship in college softball. But that investment is not just in college softball. That investment's happening right now with their football program.
No doubt.
You have, you also had this kind of uncapped year. And I'm sure you guys have talked about that, where you had this initial, as long as you got your money in before the House settlement went into effect, you could kind of spend whatever you wanted to build this initial roster class. And then going after this class, now everyone has to play under the same rules.
In theory.
Well, yeah, I mean,
right. No, I'm with you. Go ahead.
there's always, in theories there, but the idea is that, the Broadcasting Act now stops those things from happening for these conferences to be able to go out as a wider group and say, hey, let's work together. I think there's also a little bit of pipe dreaming in some of that, because I'm not sure how motivated Greg Sankey or Tony Petitti, for that matter, are to go negotiate with the ACC and the Big 12 and anyone else to share in television rights deals, because I don't know that the valuation is quite the same. But it would unquestionably bring a bigger number together, and there would be more more opportunities for more teams to get attention. And I think it also, as we often hear with the big noon kickoff on our side, where Fox is the voice of with CBS and NBC. In our world, and then ESPN is the SEC's network,
Yeah.
right? So, ESPN is always thinking, the conversation is always ESPN looking out for the SEC, which then becomes a conversation around the college football playoff time of who gets chosen, who gets seeded, all things that probably have absolutely zero to do with the reality, but it's what gets talked about. And so, one of the things it would do is it would, in theory, help eliminate some of the quote unquote partisanness of some of the television networks. But to go back to where we were is unquestionably an interesting. This dollar amount, yes, as you mentioned, they're supposed to be a silent partner, but they're not entering into this without knowing that they're getting their $2 billion back plus some nice return.
Yeah.
So they're going to be putting pressure on the conferences or on the conference to make sure that they're getting their 2 billion back plus a return, and whatever that return is most likely agreed to ahead of time. So whether it's 10%, 8%, whatever that number is, the conference is going to have to come up with that money between now and 2046 in a series of paybacks, whether that's through partnership, new sponsorship deals, whether that's through the creation of new opportunities for multi-team events or whatever the case is within the Big Ten, whether that's the creation of other things that we haven't even thought about yet.
Yeah.
We don't know, but those are all things that are all part of this discussion that I think has left some people with a lot of questions and some real concerns, and I think other people who are really frustrated right now. If I was, and I'm not speaking for anyone in any university's situation, but I think it's really got to be really frustrating for some of these schools who really need the cash.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you go do this. It's because UCLA is running multi-$100 million budget deficits. Rutgers, Maryland, we talked about Northwestern,
Yeah.
with this $700 million stadium build to rebuild Ryan. You have these people who really need money, and they're really concerned. And Purdue's kind of, I would say, kind of in the middle of this. I mean, I think they're, I don't think AD Babinski's going to be turning down the check if it shows up, but I don't know that they're dying for it. But I also think that they benefit from it unquestionably, because they're never going to be revenue wise as strong as the elite institutions from a financial standpoint when it comes to Ohio State and Michigan and the USCs of the world.
Cody Campbell, obviously the person we're talking about at Texas Tech that you see on the bought a lot of airtime, has been part of this. One last question: the SEC. Well, two things. Notre Dame is a factor in this too, and because long-term planning, it makes it tougher. And then you look at also, is the SEC okay? I mean, because you've talked well about Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti in terms of that. They are the two power brokers in college sports right now, without question. The second part of that question is the SEC all hunky-dory with this deal as well?
To go with the first one, I think the Notre Dame is always this proverbial next expansion target.
The Irishman in the room, right?
So, but I also think when you have now a Notre Dame playing in the Big Ten in multiple sports, because the SEC doesn't have that conference, so you have them in hockey. Yeah. I believe they're in both lacrosse conferences.
Yeah, right.
Don't quote me on that, but I believe so. You have they're now, there's maybe more of a relationship now with the conference than there has maybe ever been. Now within the individual schools, there actually probably is less of a relationship outside of Purdue. I mean, if you look at the upcoming schedule for Notre Dame for the next several years, there's not much Big Ten representation on that schedule outside of Purdue.
Yeah.
But I also think that that's a statement as much about the 9-game conference schedule,
right?
Sure. And the lack of spots to play is anything else. And so Notre Dame is in this strange spot where they can't do anything until 2036 because of their grant of rights to the ACC. outside of football. And so the Big Ten would have to take them on only for football until that point if they were looking to make future expansion, which we all know that there's no expansion on the table right at this particular
Right.
second. But that doesn't mean that it's not being talked about. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's not bubbling somewhere. And we don't know what that, that's the long term concern of locking anything in. And because you just don't know what tomorrow brings with any of this,
Yeah.
who leaves, who goes, who comes, who becomes available. All of those things are really important to a conference that values education as a really important part of its mission. And Notre Dame, as much as some people would like to, in this state, would just have some real feelings about Notre Dame. It fits into that mission
Yeah.
very well. And then to go to the Southeastern Conference, they've been very quiet, I
Yeah.
would say, and I don't think that's by accident. I think they're trying to see what's actually going to happen. Is this going to actually happen? Because they have member institutions that have the same issues.
Sure.
South Carolina, Mississippi States, even Ole Miss, even though they've been moving, well, there's a massive disparity between them and the Texas A&Ms and the Texases and those schools that have huge athletics budgets. Alabama, there's massive disparity there, and so sometimes I think people will get really lost up here in our issues and not realize just how massive that gap is between the haves and have-nots down there. Because we talk about it here, and the budget disparities are actually much smaller in the Big Ten. Outside of a couple schools, Ohio State, which is always going to be just kind of out on its own right now,
Yeah.
and a couple other schools, but the rest of the conference is relatively evenly balanced out from a budgetary standpoint. And then but in the Southeastern Conference, you have sometimes 60, $80 million separating schools that are competing in for the same thing. And we're not just talking about two or three. We're talking about, 5 or 6 schools that are 80 to $100 million ahead of everybody else. And so I think there's some real watching going on down there to see what's going to be tolerated and what's going to be happening. And I'm sure that this is, I think that there's conversations happening. I was actually shocked that the ACC wasn't the first domino in this, that it
Yeah.
was 10, because the ACC needs money.
Yeah.
The conference schools. I mean, I think the only thing that's probably stopping them is the fact that schools are trying to leave,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how to get out of their granted rights. But there's a massive need for money across all of these conferences, and so if this works, and they feel like it's a safe investment, and they can find a partner that's willing to do it without it costing them too much, I think you're going to see that if it happens here, you're going to see the rest of the conferences jump on board, because they all are in
All in the same boat.
similar boats. I
Yeah.
mean, they all have the same problems, and I think it's we often live in a world of what we know, but I think it's important to always note that it's not a unique problem to Purdue. It's not a unique problem to the Big Ten. It's a college sports problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, well explained, and it comes down to one common denominator: money and funding of sports, and being able to do that at a level that will keep fan bases happy, keep student athletes happy on down the line. It is a tangled web. I can promise you this will not be our last conversation, not only on this topic, but Patrick does a great job of bringing this up forward. There's so many issues out there in college sports that will be dealt with, and of course, talked about at the Purdue graduate level sport management program. I'm glad you guys are here, and I think it's an important part of trying to navigate this world. And thanks so much for taking the time with us.
Well, thank you for having us, and we appreciate the opportunity always to be a part of the discussion here in Golden Black, and all of what you guys do for Purdue athletics and Purdue as a whole is greatly appreciated.
All right. Sounds good. Have a great rest of your weekend. And thanks again, Patrick. I want to thank our sponsors. And of course, that's Triple X on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, and the good folks at WLFI, TJ, Steve Clark, Chris Collar on down the line. We appreciate you helping put this all on today for Golden Black Live. We'll be back next week. it's homecoming weekend in West Lafayette when Purdue takes on Rutgers, and we'll have another show for that as well. So have a great rest of your Friday or whenever you're watching this, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us here at Golden Black Live.